All right, in a big development, Canada's premier intelligence agency, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or the CSIS, has officially acknowledged that Khalistani extremists are using Canadian soil to promote, fundraise and plan violence in India. CSIS released its annual report on Wednesday, outlining some key concerns and threats to Canada's national security. India has been raising concerns about Khalistani extremists operating from Canadian soil for years. But Canada had largely turned a blind eye to the issue. Now, the CSIS report confirms that Canada has become a safe haven for anti-India elements, validating India's concerns that have been raised for years. And this comes a day after Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Canadian counterpart, Modi-Carney, agreed to take calibrated steps to restore stability to the relationship and decided to restore high commissioners to each other's capitals. At the G7 Leaders Summit in Kananaskis, Alberta, Canadian Prime Minister Modi-Carney held talks with Prime Minister Modi, and both leaders agreed to designate new high commissioners with a view to returning to regular services in citizens and businesses in both countries, according to a press release from the Prime Minister of Canada. In fact, Hardeep Singh Puri, the Union Minister, had earlier reacted to this development. Let's quickly take a listen.
कुछ लोग वहां से जो उनको फंडिंग मिलती है बगल वाले देश से, वो उन्होंने किया धरना, पर उसको फिर फंडिंग नहीं हुई तो उन्होंने उन्हीं पे जाके उनके खिलाफ कर दी. देखिए, ये किराए के टट्टू जो है ना, इनके डोंट टेक देम सीरियसली.
All right, I'm joined by Canadian journalist Daniel Botman. A very warm welcome to you, Mr. Botman. How significant is this acknowledgement really by the CSIS for Canada's own domestic debate on Khalistani extremism or terrorism?
Yeah, it's another step in the right direction. I would like to temper everyone's enthusiasm. The report also does mention that India is involved in foreign interference. So one step forward, one step back, you win some, you lose some. But there does seem to be what I predicted in some balance being restored. But this is sort of liberal Canadian balance where it's not we're going to take a side. It's we will take India's side and the Khalistani side and balance it. So this is a positive step because we were in a very bad scenario with Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh really hammering and running cover for the Khalistani extremists. But you've seen under the Carney administration and with the collapse of Jagmeet's NDP and him being gone, there is a concerted effort in the new Liberal regime, it looks like, to, if they're not going to crack down on Khalistan right now, and it might be part of something, maybe more bilateral negotiations need to take place. But it looks like we are not letting Khalistani lunatics dictate our foreign policy vis-a-vis India and the rest of South Asia. It looks like they probably will be allowed to run around on the streets, wave flags, hit Modi with shoes, have floats of Indira Gandhi violence. Because even if we designate them a terrorist organization, it's unlikely we would do anything about it. There's recent evidence of that. Canada listed the IRGC, which is a transnational terrorist organization, as a terrorist organization. It had murdered Canadians on Canadian soil, Mehdi Amin, and it had shot down an airplane full of Canadians, Flight 182, the Ukrainian Flight 182. Sorry, PS 752. 182 is what the Khalistanis blew up. And we haven't done anything about them. So we sometimes, when the Liberals are forced to designate a terrorist, they do, is their will to enforce, right? So that's the other level. Now, so good news for India is, Hardeep Singh Nijjar and co. will no longer be dictating Canadian foreign policy. The bad news is we likely won't do anything serious about these lunatics because we don't do anything serious about the extremists we designate as actual terrorists. Usually most terrorist operation and busts in Canada over the last 10 or so years are done because of FBI or American intelligence kind of doing our homework for us. So maybe if there's a good intelligence sharing operation and, the Indians can do our homework for us and then, point us to some sort of narco-terrorist drug ring, they might arrest them. But again, even if we do arrest the Khalistani terrorists and narco-terrorists, they'll probably be out in bail in another 15 minutes, and we'll get one of them convicted maximum for like a 3-month sentence. So Canada has a lot of problems, but we're improving slightly.
Mr. Bodman, for years, Canada denied or downplayed India's concerns. What changed? Why now?
I mean, I think there's a giant sort of attitude shift in the country, and the Liberals were scared because there was a deep anti-Trudeau sentiment, and Trudeau had a brand of buffoonery, let's say, and you know, wokeness, you could say. Like Canadians got tired of sort of what is the buffoonery and the woke leftism, like the performative activism, and they wanted at least like as the kids would say, a vibe shift towards more of a centrist elite kind-hearted technocrat, which is the role Modi-Carney is kind of playing. So in the return to sort of centrist technocracy and stable government and being reasonable, having lunatics waving flags, whacking people at a temple isn't the greatest look of stability. I think Canadians now Canadians want to at least pretend that we never went through that like 10-year crazy phase, with Justin Trudeau and all that wacky buffoonery that he did because he became so deeply unpopular that there's now an element where I think the Canadian public wants this. I think no one knew who the Khalistanis were until the hard up signature thing. No one, again, why am I the only guy on Indian TV or most of it? Because I'm one of the 10 non-Indian Canadians who knew what a Khalistani was 2.5 years ago. So now there actually is a general public perception, we have the polling on this, on the Khalistan movement, to the majority of the population, the people stepping on Indian flags, ripping things up with swords, whacking Modi effigies with a sandal, look like lunatics. They look like lunatics and they don't look like Canadians. Canadians don't like this. We are very kind and polite people, unless we're playing hockey is the joke on it. But again, all the scenes that are being blasted on TV about the Khalistani movement, every time you put a microphone in front of one of the Khalistanis, they start to say things that alienate the Canadian public from their cause. So when they have nice guys in suits talking about transnational repression on the CBC and they can drum up a nice story in a closed environment, like that has sort of won over some faction of the Canadian public, but they never openly go Khalistani there. They couch it in human rights and Sikh activists and all that. But once you get to the actual Khalistanis and all the Khalistani demonstrations, these people look like lunatics on the streets, and we have a big problem in Canada, the rest of the West too, of lunatics running around the streets. The Khalistanis are the second biggest problem we're facing right now. We have a conglomeration of jihadis and communists taking over our major cities every weekend. But this, again, waving swords, hitting Modi effigies with a sandal does not translate to, increased public favorability ratings in Canada.
Right. India can see that quite clearly, Mr. Bodman. You just said that Canada is unlikely to do anything about it. Does simply labeling these groups as extremists without concrete action like arrests, deportations, or asset freeze actually deter their activities? Or does it, sort of risk being seen as mere symbolism?
I mean, any actions you take with extremists and crazy people, you actually have to take deterrence. You have to have some arrests. One of the big problems, again, is the lack of deterrence in general. So we have a Khalistan problem, we have a Chinese gang infiltration problem, a transnational criminal problem, Hamas, Hezbollah, just general chaos, car theft, because we've lost deterrence. Our soft on crime, nice to criminals. We're gonna hug the criminality away. The reason why people commit crimes is because they need to steal bread for a starving family member, or they just weren't read enough poetry in second grade, or whatever it is. And a nice big hug and a second chance will get them sorted. No, that's not reality. It does not work. And by enabling bad behavior, we've got more bad behavior. So it's more a general question in Canada on like how much do we want to deter crime. There's a lot of things we can do. I mean, the transnational crime, we need RICO laws on money laundering. That's a big problem in Canada. We need a culture that actually supports incarceration of violent offenders. And we need a population to sort of take the foreign interference seriously. You know, the the narco terrorism is a big thing, and the Khalistanis are play a central role in the logistics of that. Uh, if we start to take all these things seriously, and there could be a world where, you know, Modi and Trump and Carney, there's a triangulation of you know, trade between America and Canada and the Khalistan movement and drugs and fentanyl and the Chinese. And listen, I mean, the West has had a conversation, and I think a large part of why the Hardip Singh Najjar issue was so big in Canada. Yes, it's Pakistan. Khalistan is Pakistani foreign interference, but it's very, very, very allied with China, and China has a vested interest of undermining India in the West, because the West, I think, correctly sees as India the only viable hedge against China. So sowing discord,
Mr. Boardman, I'm really sorry I have to interrupt you here because I need your quick reaction on this aspect as well. Unfortunately, I'm short on time. Mr. Boardman, is there a political cost for any Canadian government to openly confront Khalistani groups?
Yeah, there's actually a cost, not in votes, but in money. It's about $2 to $10 million. It would be the actual cost of Khalistani drug money, or, you know, political donations they can get into the party. But they don't actually benefit you in a general election. They're quite unpopular. You lose votes in a general election, but you can help your cause as an individual in a primary. So that's the voting thing. But in a general election, there actually isn't a benefit. But the benefit is getting into the primaries, and they're very good. Money laundering is very easy in Canada, and one of the ways to launder money effectively is through politics. So it's about $2 to $10 million in dirty money you can take from the Khalistanis. But if you're willing to say no to $2 to $10 million and realize you're a political party, you can make money a bunch of other ways. And by having a productive economy, you can make billions of dollars instead of $2 to $10 million. But it would take a real different and special Canadian leader to understand that, like, 10 billion is a bigger number than 2 million if 2 million is thrown in their face right immediately. But it looks like Carney, you know, Carney has Brookfield asset management. So if India can work out a deal with Canada where Brookfield gets like $1 billion in the cut or more of it, yeah, the Liberal Party will figure out that, you know, India is more valuable than Khalistan. There you go.